Hey, Larcy, thanks for joining today.
No problem.
And I want to welcome Mike and Lee as well. We will get started with our interview in just a moment, letting the last couple folks trail in.
Hello, everyone.
I'm already nervous.
Woo!
I think all the secrets are out at this point, Mike. I think Loose Lips has let us in.
I don't know.
Gets out of
Tommy,
the bed.
you know, my days are calm and reassured and sensible 29 and a half out of the 30 times I wake up every day. There's that window where I have that impending doom where I see it on my calendar that I have to take part in a Twitter Spaces with Lee. You just don't ever know.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Let's get ready to gossip. I think
Love that energy.
Let's get ready to rumor monger.
All right.
Here's the funny thing. It's actually not gossip or rumor. Like Lee is always right. I'm just not prepared for the. So this is what Lee does. He runs into a crowded theater and yells feature release or studio name change or whatever, and then runs away and goes back to the confines of the comfy digital kind of, couches that are Tyranno Studios. And now I have to go and clean up everything that he's done. And it doesn't really matter where I go. I get the, hey, I heard Lee said this today. And I'm like, great.
Well,
That's the way I like it.
Without further ado, let's keep everybody on their toes. And let me say good morning and good afternoon, Wax fam. This is another fantastic Wax Wednesday. I am Tommy. Apologize for my voice. I'm a little under the weather. Today, I will be your host. Today, I am joined by Larcy, who's our outreach specialist. Schnazzy has the night off and will be back next week. So much love to Schnazzy. Joining us will be two titans of the ring here to discuss recent developments in the play-to-own game Blockchain Brawlers. On my left, we have Mike Rubinelli, general manager of the newly rebranded Tyranno Studios and gaming industry veteran with a list of credits too long for me to go into here. And on my right is the product manager for Wax Tyranno team, Lee Jenkins. Now, these two have faced off in an AMA in the ring before and are about to do so again right now. Mike, Lee, welcome.
Hey, Tommy, thanks for having me. Always good to be here. This is, I think this is my first Wax Wednesday, although it's like our fifth or sixth Twitter Spaces. And so I always say to the other folks, how do you guys get on that show with Tommy and Snaz every Wednesday afternoon? I don't have enough juice, but I'm glad I'm here now.
I think you brought enough juice today. I've definitely, with all the excitement that's been happening with Blockchain Brawlers. So we're going to start today's call off with just a general overview of Blockchain Brawlers. For any newcomers, we'll talk about what is it, what do you need to play, and how you can participate in the open beta that will be launching a little bit shortly. Then after that, we'll bring up some members from our audience. We'll bring them right into the ring, and they can ask their pressing questions directly of Mike and Lee. And so without further ado, let me hand the mic over to Larcy, and we'll get this party started.
Thank you, Tommy. I'm really excited to kick off our Q&A, and I know I have big shoes to fill because Schnazzy's not around today. And, she's always brought a lot of energy and life to this
Absolutely.
Twitter Spaces. So, So, Lee, Mike, what can you tell us about Blockchain Brawlers? Like, what is it about?
What is the game about?
Because I know there's been a lot of excitement with the PvP version of the game. Like it came out, everyone's excited about it. But what is it about the PvP cards that should get people excited?
Well, Larcy, let's take a step back and kind of share for this group. I see a lot of new faces on here that I've not seen in these typical kind of audio Q&A. And so why don't we take a step back and really talk about kind of what is Wax, or I'm sorry, I don't know how many times I'm going to do that, by the way, so I apologize in advance. What does Tyranno Studios mean? Like, what do we believe? What do we stand for? We should start with that. And so players and participants and whatnot understand kind of the perspective that we come at this world from. We really believe in building entertainment properties that are really, really fun to play. And the net result of these really fun and engaging things are that players own and have complete control 100% over the things that they bought. Like, that's such a foreign concept to the big publishers. And yet, if you have been in the business as long as we have, not to date ourselves, but we've been in this business a really, really long time. Like, we know there's real power to be given to the players, and to sort of tear down those walls that kind of, encapsulate them in the walled garden is a dangerous thing, right? And players stay in games because I can't quit now. I've got too much money invested into this thing, or I've got too much time. We think the players should have full control over what they do. So anytime we build, whether it's blockchain brawlers or it's music mogul or anything, other things on our roadmap, like, we believe in allowing the players, like, you know what, you crafted it, it dropped for you, you paid for it, you bought it, you traded for it, it was gifted to you, whatever. What do you do with it? Like, whatever you want, without the fear of getting their account banned or getting blacklisted or what have you. So that's kind of the premise of Toronto Studios, in terms of really driving that mass kind of adoption of this philosophy and bringing it forward. And we know that, I'll just put a finer point on all this, we know that the larger publishers of the world, EA and Activision and Warner and others, they won't do this until there's a North Star that exists. And that North Star will be built by a group that's native in the space, because we're the ones who have the courage to lead that charge. And once that North Star takes place, or is present and is obvious, then everybody will follow suit. Like, that S-curve adoption it'll just be just rampant, sort of like, oh, it's all about ownership. And you'll hear everybody say that. And we think we're building that North Star, and we think that North Star is blockchain brawlers.
I think that's a wonderful insight. There were a lot of questions initially about that rebrand. Everyone knew what Wax Studios was, and then suddenly we come out and say, "Hey, we're rebranding to Toronto Studios." Like, what's behind that name?
That's a great question. I'm actually going to let Loose Lips take that one, because I have a bunch of questions today in Discord that he didn't see, that said, I'd be interested to hear the genesis of that name, and I want everybody to know that Loose Lips actually kind of headed up the naming process and really was the impetus behind not only the change, but the picking of Toronto. So Loose Lips, please, educate us, if you will.
Well, as a big fan of the band T-Rex,
you really are aging yourself now. Everybody's going to think you're like 68 years old, like T-Rex. Come on.
I am on the inside. But, when we came up with the name, we said, what's bigger than the Tyrannosaurus Rex? Nothing. It's the king. It was the king of the dinosaurs. And we are Wax, the king of NFTs, and the king of crypto gaming increasingly, and blockchain gaming and Web3 gaming.
Right.
And so we said, why don't we call ourselves Tyranno Studios? And people said, well, but Tyranno could be, people might read it as Tyranno, and Tyranno means tyrant. And wouldn't that be bad? And we just said, actually, no, that's kind of cool. That's a game studio called Tyrant is actually not a bad name either. But so whether we're talking about, we pronounce it Tyranno like the dinosaur as opposed to Tyranno.
Right.
But whether you're taking it as Tyrant or you're taking it as based on the T-Rex, the idea is we're big, we're bold, we're strong, and we're looking to dominate.
We're apex predators.
Right,
So
and want to dominate the Web3 gaming space. And we want the Wax blockchain to dominate the blockchain space. And, one of the reasons driving the name change was the idea that, some people thought it was a confusion causing thing to have our game studio be called Wax Studios. Because they wanted a little more separation between the blockchain itself and our team, which was making games. Furthermore, as we continue trying to push multi-chain connectivity between Wax and other blockchains, and also allowing our games to have greater cross-chain functionality, it also, Wax Studios as a name doesn't necessarily fit, because it could be very confusing as we're doing multi-chain stuff to have a name that's just Wax Studios when we're trying to increase connectivity of all of these blockchains, which benefits Wax and our games, but it benefits the whole Web3 ecosystem to allow that connectivity. It's just like if you think of a game like Fortnite, one of my classic favorites before Epic in the middle of the pandemic decided to yank it away from me, so I couldn't use it on my iOS device anymore. But, multi-platform for gaming is a great thing for gaming, right? The ability to play it on your Xbox and your PlayStation and your iOS device and your Android device, it just adds value to the community. And I think that's what we want to do with blockchain. We want to increase connectivity between Wax and other blockchains, and then our games will benefit from that increased connectivity because it allows you to trade anywhere and play on Wax, right? And so we did that with blockchain Brawlers already with our first sale last December when we did some sales of one-of-ones on Binance NFT, that those assets could then be bridged to Wax, and all of them were. We're now going to do some blockchain Brawlers assets on Ethereum that can also, through our cloud wallet, be bridged into the game. And then the assets originally created on Wax can be bridged to be traded on these other blockchains as well. We think that can only enhance the utility of Wax and enhance the utility of our games. I think walled gardens generally don't work well historically. Having ecosystems that are more open historically have always been the ecosystems that work super well. I think the principles of blockchain and decentralization themselves dictate the idea that you should not have closed walled gardens, and interconnectivity between blockchains is a pretty crucial principle, I think, of decentralization. And so that's what we as the Wax blockchain team, and also us as the Toronto Studios team, are going to seek to achieve, is to increase the connectivity between the Wax blockchain in our games and all of these other chains out there. And I think everyone benefits from that. Similarly, we did just launch that ERC20 Wax P token that you can now bridge back and forth for Wax P, and now on a bunch of exchanges, including Binance, OKX, KuCoin, Gate.io, and Huobi. You can now choose to deposit or withdraw Wax P tokens on either the Wax or Ethereum network. Our DeFi system is now utilizing that ERC20 Wax P token. So all of these connection points, I think, just further enhances the utility of Wax and grows the community.
Yeah, I was going to say, you think about it. I mean, it's a really super interesting point. It's actually kind of sneaky of us, but the reality is the Wax blockchain was purpose built for high volume, high transactional capacity of assets, and we know that in gaming, that's vital. If you ever listen to William Quigley speak at any of the conferences he goes to or any interviews he does, whether it's MSNBC, CNBC, it's kind of all the same. When we set out to build Wax, we first set out to build it on Ethereum. Not a lot of people realize that. And about 2 months in, we realized it can never scale to the level that we needed to scale to in terms of, time to finality and expeditious transaction volume. All these things that Wax has actually done today, they knew early on that that's what they needed to go, and they couldn't do anywhere else outside of kind of Wax, built on the EOSIO standard. And so when we say we're going to go cross-chain and we're going to have kind of, multi-chain support and all the things we talk about in this cross-chain world, we don't mean that we're going to build something that lives in a silo on Ethereum and in a silo on an L2 or whatnot. We're talking about bridges to assets that have different, NFT standards, but utility lives on Wax. We're going to bring players into the Wax world and go, holy cow, I didn't realize transacting and working with and kind of utility tied to NFTs on this protocol was this robust and was this rewarding and was this compelling. Like, holy cow. Like, I mean, I sort of think of it as, like I said, it's kind of a sneaky little Trojan horse. When people hear about what Wax does, like when I do all these other interviews, they're like, I didn't realize it was that great. And then when players come in and they play on it, or they work with it, or whether they buy and sell collections, like the market standard is interesting. Like, but the utility is so good, and the responsiveness is so good, and it's so Web 2 in how it performs. People go, gee, I wish everything kind of worked the way Wax did. And this is our way of saying, yeah, we've really kind of cracked the code on what that user experience wants to be. And we're going to go to all these other chains that are very siloed, right? There's a lot of tribalism around, like, oh, I'm a Polygon person, or I'm a Solana person, or I'm a mutable person. Like, yeah, great. You can have your tribalism. You can sell anywhere you want to sell. But when you really want to use something and have a robust and really responsive experience, do it on Wax. I assure you, it will open your eyes and you'll think twice about it. But you don't have to be locked into just your one protocol. Like, imagine if there was like literally 15 different video game systems. Like, nobody would win. And nobody would care, and everything would be fractured, and it wouldn't make sense. And then all these other video games are like, well, if my disc works on a PlayStation 5, I also want my disc to work on, an Xbox One. I also want to work on the Nintendo Switch. But I don't want to do 3 separate versions. I want to do one version that I can just take across all those different hardware platforms. Because as we talk about a lot, like, the protocol layer is all well and good, but really you have to have the applications that can seamlessly kind of work just wherever you are. Right. And so that ease of adoption, that interoperability, like, all those things are really important. But utility on Wax is really what we're going to showcase through this branded change and kind of how we see the world and the features that we build.
Our CTO, Lucas, was making some interesting points to me. Different chains have different strengths, right? Mm-hmm. The Wax chain was purpose-built for NFTs and gaming, and it shows. I mean, there's more than 300 million NFTs on Wax, right, which is orders of magnitude more than any other blockchain, right?
Right.
But one of the interesting things was with the new Ethereum upgrade to proof of stake, it is not moving closer to being a better gaming chain. Ethereum is great with liquidity. Ethereum is great with DeFi. Mm-hmm. Those are areas that Wax is not as strong with. Mm-hmm. There is not a lot of DeFi in Wax. There's some, but there's not a lot. Mm-hmm. But gaming is where Wax is clearly dominant.
Right.
And so one of the stats Lucas gave me was particularly interesting. He said, right before the ETH merge, Ethereum had a finality of 6 minutes. Mm-hmm. And Wax had the current finality on Wax is around 2 minutes. And post-merge, the finality on Ethereum actually went up to closer to 30 minutes for mm-hmm. finality of a transaction, which means that you could actually have things moving slower when trying to use Ethereum for gaming than you did pre-merge.
Right. Yeah, and the difference between gaming and non-gaming is collections and DeFi things aren't a lot of like transactional, like the needs they're not there. So as an example, we talk about all the time, if you're buying a Bored Ape and you had to wait 2 to 3 days, which happened, you didn't care. Like, it's a collection, like whatever, there's no utility and I don't really need it right now. With gaming, as gamers, we're degenerates, we're compulsive, we lose, we want to win, we want to buy something to really just nuke whoever just beat us. And like, there's something about the gamer that wants that instant gratification, wants that instant access that you cannot deny. It's been there since kind of day one in gaming 30 years ago. Like the will and the win and the desire to progress and I beat a boss, I beat a level, I want a PvP, I want a PvPvP. Like, there's all these things that rely on the immediacy and the expeditious nature of being able to, I bought this, I want to use it.
Yeah, and one of the fascinating things Lucas told me about where Wax is headed is that right. Early next year, as we start to roll out some new features, we're participating mm-hmm. in the Antelope project. In it, that's going to add an EVM to Wax, by the way, which is very exciting. But mm-hmm. one of the other interesting things is that finality on Wax is going to go down from 2 minutes to 2 seconds. So then you're comparing 2-second finality on Wax to up to 30 minutes on ETH proof of stake. It's clear that Wax is very well suited to highly time-sensitive transactions, such as gaming being the best example of where time sensitivity is everything. The slightest latency in a person's controller, might be a problem, right? Millisecond latency.
Yeah.
And so you can't have things take too long. So we continue to improve the chain to really focus it on the needs of blockchain games.
Yeah, and we're super sort of sensitive and aware as to sort of what needs to absolutely live on the chain and what doesn't need to live on the chain. So having that perspective as game developers and people who have done this for a long time also helps optimize that experience sooner, opposed to people saying, oh, games are easy, right? Because it's just a game. How hard can it be? So I'll just go build a game on Ethereum and it'll be just great. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, games are really hard to make, and they're hard to make really well, and they're hard to the ability to kind of attract consumers and keep consumers is a bit of a dark art, and there's a lot that goes into that. And the great thing about the folks that we have are very, very well versed in that. So you combine all these factors in, and you get this highly optimized, really almost native feeling kind of core gaming experience, but on Web3, which nobody else can say and nobody else is doing. So the nice thing, I think, that people talking about it, we're actually, this is what we believe, and it's on the screen, right? Just go see for yourself. Don't take our word for it. Form your own opinions. Yeah. We're happy to stand behind our work. The money's on the screen, as we like to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are some really interesting points, and I love that when we rebranded to Terrano Studios, it made it more creative and more fun, which is all the more fitting, knowing that we're one of the first to acknowledge that we're going multi-chain, and that's the next, new frontier. But kind of dialing it back down, some of the games that are in with blockchain brawlers, like how how do you have the brawlers exist on multi-chain? How do you think that would help bring more attention to what Wax has to offer? Why blockchain brawlers?
Yeah, look, I think the thing that's really key to focus on is we go out and I do a bunch of interviews and I make some really kind of bold claims and I make some evocative statements. And just today there was an interview I did on with a group called On-Chain Gaming. They got tens of thousands of followers on Twitter, and they the lead-in was Wax CGO attacks Axie Infinity or something like that, like some clickbait kind of headline. But if you watch the interview, I really do kind of take a shot at the gamification of decentralized finance. And I said, this is a path to nowhere, and all the things that have come before us have failed. And we talk about what we believe. So when we say things like that, people go, okay, you're leading with entertainment. You're leading with, value tied to having a really, really good time. And you lead with things that make sense to me philosophically, opposed to, hey, come in here and in a month, I promise you can buy a Lambo and retire and never do anything. Like, we don't say stuff like that, even though that's what people want to hear. Like, we won't tell you what you want to hear. We'll tell you that we'll lead with entertainment first and economy second, because we know that exists and we know that's a thing, and we believe there's a place for that. But you have to lead with something that's really, really enjoyable to do. And so we go out and we say, just give us a try. And so we have this kind of entertainment proposition. Again, if you look at blockchain brawlers, largely to your point, it's got a PvP game designed by Richard Garfield, one of the greatest video game designers of all time. And if you don't know Richard Garfield, look him up. But he's, the TLDR on him is he's the designer of Magic the Gathering. And it's like, well, does that map to Web3 gaming? Well, what's the strength of Magic the Gathering? Well, besides it being just an incredibly great game with a lot of different metas and whatnot, like 22 billion Magic the Gathering cards have traded on the secondary market. Now, these happen to be, comic book stores and pawn shops and what have you, and collectible spaces in eBay. But 22 billion cards since 1995 have traded hands between players. That is a player-to-player economy. That is a participation model. That is what we're pushing for. That's what we're doing. So we work with a guy who literally wrote the book on creating a player-to-player economy, built with, the founders of, the Wax blockchain and then ultimately Wax Studios, which is now Terrano, which is, real digital economies and digital marketplaces. And then we've taken Richard's game design brilliance and we brought it into this world. We said, okay, this is entertainment tied to player-to-player economies that is going to be an esports that's going to run for many, many years. We don't mention your ROI is 30 days. We don't mention, when Lambo. We don't mention when Moon. We don't say, we don't talk about NFTs. We don't talk about the blockchain. We talk about a really, really good use of your time, right? Come here and you'll have a ton of fun. And then the counter argument to that, and I get it all the time in Discord, is like, nobody will come in and play your game unless they can make any money. Like, it's the most myopic argument ever, and I get it, and God bless people. I understand you believe what you believe, and I understand your perception is your reality. But I will tell you that there are 3 billion gamers in the world today that spent $175 billion last year on products, and they didn't own a single thing. Not one digital asset. And if they tried to sell it, they risk getting blacklisted or getting banned. We are trying to bring the notion of, we know players want to do that. We know they've done that for 30 years in kind of, digital dark alleys and in ways that are violating, terms of service and end user licensing agreements. But we know this behavior wants to happen. We know that players want to do it. We know how to do it because, again, if you look at our founders, you look at our history, they've done it. And now what we're saying is we're going to legitimize this to the masses. And so maybe our message doesn't land right on the nose with the 40 million crypto gamers that exist, although we try to. Where our target really is the 3 billion core gamers and really evangelizing the value and the beauty that Web3 allows for. And then when people say, well, what about the price of Ethereum? What about Bitcoin? We're in a crypto winter. It's like, right, but it doesn't really matter. Like, you tell me I bought something, I get to own it. Do I care about the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum? Yeah, maybe somewhere down the line I do, because NFTs and NFT appreciation ties to scarcity or ties to token stability or token appreciation, and tokens are tied to, yeah, maybe. The real thing that drives us is I bought something like I did in real life. In real life, when I buy something, I do with it what I want. Well, in my digital life, when I buy something, I also want to do with it what I want. And that's the power, and that's what we're pushing for. But if your entertainment value, which you have utility and you have ownership in, doesn't matter, then the value of those things and the appeal of those things don't matter as much. So that's really largely how we see the role. So when you say why blockchain brawlers and why this and why that, and why are we trying to go to these other chains and bring in all these other people? Because we think we've crafted this experience that's completely unique and is objectively fun to play. And if you come in and you have a good time and you meet our community is great, like our gameplay loops are great, our player experience is great, our onboarding is great, our user journey is great. We built a viral marketplace that's embedded inside the game. It's like literally eBay inside of our game. Like, you don't have to go to 18 different kind of secondary sites to find the best pricing and all. Like, no, just transact and just have it all be very native. Like, it's such a differentiated experience, and the more exposure we can get the more people we can get exposed to that, the better off we think we are. And we think that Blockchain Brawlers, designed by Richard Garfield, is that vehicle.
I love that. Like when people talk about the games, especially like in the blockchain space, right? Like, they think about, oh, it's not so fun. It's mostly mining. It's mostly, like click to earn, and it's not exciting anymore. But what you guys done is you've created something and you made it interesting enough to get people's attention. And I think that's one of the most important things that game designers need to think about when they build a game. But talking about that, like, what are some of the NFT mechanics that exist in Blockchain Brawlers that would only be possible in Wax, that can really highlight what Wax is about?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. One of the things that we're literally, let me look at the time. In 1 hour and 31 minutes, we are turning on our Brawlers, which is our latest NFT tied to a crafting minigame that we've been designing. And it represents a real departure from other NFTs in terms of utility, power, scalability. Like, there's all these things that are like the Brawlers is literally the coolest. First of all, it's the coolest looking NFT I've ever seen. It's gorgeous to look at. Aesthetics aside, if you look at utility, if you look at use, power, scale, like all these things, we're selling a little over 1,000 of those. And what those are effectively, you can think of them as kind of franchises. You can think of them as kind of crafting memberships. You can think of them as land plots that give you access to a crafting game. What it really is it is an NFT that you buy and you use, and you spend your fungible token currency. And what you're doing is you're crafting every single asset that every single player in the world who's ever going to play Blockchain Brawlers will need to play that PvP game. And this is just day one. This asset, which by the way uses mutable data, which is great, meaning the more you use it, the more it levels up, like a game. The more it levels up, the higher value asset it creates. If a higher value assets create, the more kind of power you have in the game, the higher price point they'll sell for. Like there's all these things. But unlike traditional games where everybody was a crafter and everybody was a seller, and you just hope that the publisher and developer was finding more buyers. Now what we're saying is like, look, like 1,000 people will do this for a game that we hope has millions of people. So it's like, wait a minute, not everybody can do it. Well, you'd make way more money if you sold 100,000 of those things because they sound really effing cool. They are really effing cool. But the problem with selling 100,000 of them is that we get all your money and we have no risk. Like we actually want to show our audience that we have a little bit of risk, right? And once they realize that we're in the same boat that they are and that our risks are aligned, the thing that they then start to realize, like, oh, but we can put our finger on the scale. We can make sure this asset performs. We can make sure that this asset has long-ranging appeal and that it gets updated and the features are always evolving. There's a roadmap just tied to this NFT. Like there's all these things that we can do that can influence the success of something in a positive way, meaning our interests are aligned. So therefore we want to make sure that they do well. And why do we want them to do well? Because that's the gate for more players to come in. And it's this really differentiated approach in a really kind of unique and novel way of thinking about it. And I use this example all the time. So Peter Mullen, who we know fairly well, you know, he's doing a metaverse called, I think it's called The Landmark. And back in, God, what was it, January of this year, they did a land sale. They raised $153 million. Congrats. Peter has all your money and he has no risk. I hope you get a game. I hope it's great. And I hope you do well. And I hope you have a lot of fun because you have all the risk. We have very intentionally said, we will get there. We will get ours, but we'll get ours because you're getting yours. And we'll share in that risk. We'll clip the ticket on sales. We'll do a little bit of primary. We'll do a little bit of secondary participation, but really you're the winners. Like when you look at a secondary market transaction for the players in blockchain brawlers tied to the Brawlers CM, but in NFTs in general, you know, the players getting over 90% of every single sale. Like between them, they're exchanging those currencies between themselves. We're not like, you know, taking half of it. We don't have a huge VIG. And again, and so people say, well, gee, you're not going to make money. Well, we will, because everybody will realize at some point they will demand that they own their NFTs. They'll demand that they can do with them what they see fit. And they will not play games that don't have that. And for us to lead that charge and for us to show kind of what is that North Star that we should all be working towards is a really, really powerful cause we're very compelled by.
That's amazing. And I know with blockchain brawlers specifically, you take pride in the way that community is being managed, and it's definitely one of the best gaming communities in the whole of like blockchain games or even games in general. Like how are they reacting to all of these changes that are coming out?
How are they reacting? Well, first of all, let me take a step back and say it takes a village. We have an incredible social team. We have a social team that is on all the different channels 24/7. They are great. They are unbelievably well informed. As much as I think I know about my project, which I think I know more about blockchain brawlers than anybody else, they know just as much. Like they're so, but yet they have to be that deep across a bunch of different things. I get to be very singularly focused, but they are great. So it starts with them. And then we have community moderators that, you know, don't get paid anything, but they take on this cause because they believe what we believe. So when you have that alignment of beliefs, it makes it really easy. And they do things that you can't even contemplate all the goodness that they bring into the world. And what happens is, you know, a lot of projects, we talk about projects are really games, a lot of games, you know, they have people who come in who are bad actors. They've maybe, you know, quote unquote, lost a lot of money. And I don't say that to be flip. I say that because they say they lost money, but they actually haven't sold at a loss. Just their overall value has decreased because, you know, the economy has shifted. But there's a real kind of natural inclination for those bad actors to come in and FUD and turn things toxic. But that's just not allowed here because we're so transparent in what we do and what we're all about. And we back up our words with, again, like the things that they say, this is important to me. So what happens in the roadmap? The roadmap is updated through a player-focused lens. Like, oh, wow, you listen to us. And not only do you listen to us, but you actually act on what we say. And now it's not completely like the tail wagging the dog, But we have a real transparency, Larcy, and we do listen, and we take their asks to heart, and we're always present. We don't abandon the community. I will tell you, the future of success, of growth of games is community driven. It really, really is. And classic publishers will tell you, oh, it's all about the user acquisition funnel, and now that IDFA is gone, we're going to have to work towards contextual target. Like, no, you know what? Build a great community where people want to go and interact with one another, right? You want to build these, emotional bonds. You want to have empathy. You want to communities is the future of. It's not completely kind of user acquisition, but if you don't have a great community that people are coming into, then that's a huge retention tool that you lose. And so we've been very, very intentional about building a great community where we're transparent, we're omnipresent, we listen, we react, we communicate all the time. It is a very, very intentional thing that we want to make sure that when people come in, they're educated, they're informed, but they're listened to, and it's a safe space, right? So we don't tolerate any of the douchey, toxic behavior. And people, and by the way, that's not to say people can't complain. We actually embrace healthy discourse. You disagree with us, great, tell us why. We approach disagreement with curiosity, not with like, oh, we're being attacked. Like, oh, you don't agree with us? Tell us why. Let us know. Let's have a conversation about it. And that's not always super scalable because everybody's got concerns, but you try to be there for folks, and you try to make sure that people feel like they're heard. That's really what it's all about, and that's why community matters so much.
Love it. And speaking about the community, now that like we're going multi-chain, we're opening ourselves up. Live version is coming out pretty soon. Like, how do you foresee the community growing now that we are so close, and now that we are opening ourselves out to more and more diverse types of gamers?
Well, I think the thing that you have to love and appreciate is that we have this incredible foundation, right? Like, it works unbelievably well. And so when people come in, they'll realize they're a part of something that feels different. Like, I get it all the time. People are like, wow, I've never been involved with a community on Discord that is this communicative, that is this kind of informative, that's this present, that's this willing to change. Like, there's all these things they realize because the foundation has been laid. And people, they can come in and try to be bad actors, and they realize really, really quickly that's not tolerated. And that's not me saying, don't be an a-hole. That's everybody else saying, dude, why you got to come in here and be like that? Like, nobody else here is like that. They're like, oh, sorry, never mind. Like, literally, it's like that. Like, come in like all, blustery. It's like, oh, I bought something, for $10 and now it's worth $5. God damn it. It's like, yeah, well, just hang out. We're building a great game. This is a journey. It's if you only care about an ROI, this is maybe not the project for you. But if you want to be on a great game with great people and you want to grow, you want to be part of an experience, then this is it. I mean, think about how many dollars people spent in pick whatever game it is. Like, League of Legends has been playing since 2009. People have thousands and thousands of dollars. They have nothing to show for it other than they have a bunch of skins that look good. And they have nothing to show for it. Now imagine you own all those skins in League of Legends, and you're in a great community, and you can do with them as you see fit. Like, that's the power of Web3, and that's what we're preaching to the community, and that's what we're showing through our projects. And so it's a really, like I said, it's all very intentional. And by reaching out across the aisle to other chains, people coming in and see what it's like, we think and we've seen that they are going to stick around longer than they would have otherwise. And that's, like I said, from a retention standpoint, it's really, really powerful. And the thing I'll leave you with this last thought on that is, one of the things, it's like with your users, traditional publishers, we always used to talk to them about like, oh, they came on to buy a car, and the paradigm in car sales, don't let them leave the lot, right? Like, you don't want them to leave because you don't know if they'll ever come back. The same is true for gaming experiences. Like, you don't want them to leave your game experience. You want them to leave your community because you paid a lot to get them on the lot, so to speak. And you want to retain them, you want to engage them. And the way that it's done in free-to-play gaming, it's done through kind of shame and guilt and all these really unhealthy things. And what we do is we actually, don't make you want to leave because it's such a great place to be with great people. And that's a very differentiated kind of, perspective that we bring. And we think that it's one that resonates with people. Again, we hear, it's not us, well, maybe it is us tooting our own horn a little bit, but we hear people all the time saying, I really enjoy being here. And that, to me, is like one of the greatest compliments in the world.
I think that's true. I mean, there's so many nuances that one can take, but at the same time, like if I'm, just dialing it back a little bit, for everyone in here who's interested in getting into the game, like, hey, I really want to know what it's about. How do we go about it?
There's a bunch of different ways. The thing I will tell you, God, knock on wood, we're going to have an open beta. I hope. I'm checking my Discord where the developer is. I hope we have an open beta that's going live today. We're really chasing a really nasty bug, but what it is it's a downloadable client on Steam. It is free to play. You don't need a wallet. You don't need any NFTs. It's our way of sort of saying to the press, to other chains, to whatever, come on in and see what we're doing, because we're really proud of what we've done. We really want you to see it. We want you to understand what we believe through, like I said, the way that we've chosen to kind of build this product. And if and when that is live, you can very easily sign up and a key can get sent to you and you can come in and you can start playing. And like I said, there's no cost to try to play. It's a test we're going to run for kind of a week to 10 days. And you can see. And if you don't know how to play, you don't know how to win, come into the Discord community. And there's 4 different channels dedicated just towards beta matchmaking, beta getting started, beta problems, beta community, beta advice. Like there's all these beta related kind of channels we have just for the player to come in to learn and understand what it's all about. So I would love to, promote a link. Just go here to learn about the game itself. But the beta test isn't live, but we do have a white paper that's available. If you go to play.bcbrawlers.com, you can read our white paper. You can, we have a bunch of articles on Medium as a huge, literally a collection of 60 blog posts on what the game's all about. So whether you want to know about the UI, the economy, the different phases, the PvP design, the Brawlocene, all those things are kind of memorialized through different articles. But we do have a white paper that's a little bit more streamlined that you can read as well on play.bcbrawlers.com.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mike, for giving us the rundown on where we can get signed up. At this time, I would love to invite people up to the audience below to join us. And please come on up and ask this incredible duo any questions you have about the processes or about blockchain brawlers in general.
Tommy, before we do that, I'd like to congratulate myself for talking so much that Lee didn't have a chance to really kind of slip anything in there. No mystery. I've exceeded my goal.
Mike, I just want to tell everyone out there that a storm is coming. I don't want, I'm not going to tell you what that means, but just remember, a storm is coming.
Oh God. Oh God. Storm.
You heard it here first, guys. Storm is coming.
Well, that's got me thinking about all sorts of things.
Thanks, L3.
Yeah. All right. So while we're accepting requests from the audience, and we have one already from Mr. Jimmy Z. So Jimmy, come on up and ask your question. And then I'm inviting you up. There you go, Jimmy. Floor is yours. Here's the mic.
Hey, real quick, just for Mike, when you just mentioned go to, play.bcbrawlers.com. You may want to give them a heads up that right now it's getting that kind of message password protected. So I don't think they'll be able to go there until you update the.
I totally forgot. The site is in maintenance mode because we're about to roll out the Brawlocene. So Jazz, help me out. Is sales.bcbrawlers.com, that's up and live, correct? I don't know if Jazzy has speaking rights. I think it is. Yeah, I can forget it. I can just type it myself. So sales.bcbrawlers.com is actually a great site as well that you can go to. Let me just confirm. I'm not as well prepared as I need to be, apparently. Yes, sales.bcbrawlers.com. You can access the white paper there. You can get all the information about kind of, not only how to buy the Brawlocene, which is now available on the Ethereum network, but you can get information around the beta, the game, the history, the whole nine. I apologize. Yes, good point, Jimmy. Thank you.
No worries. All right, guys.
Slightly embarrassing.
I'd rather you tell them now than they be trying to go on it for the next half hour.
Of course. Thank you, Jimmy.
Oh. Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. All right, for any other questions from our audience, while we're waiting for more questions, I do want to ask both of our speakers, and you might have touched on this a little bit earlier, Mike, but what is your favorite part about the community of people who are engaging with our game and with the Brawlers NFTs?
Well, look, I think my favorite part about the community is when they love what you love. Like, that's such a powerful thing, and that maybe sounds narcissistic or super self-interested, but as a game designer and as a game developer, it's this really kind of lonely kind of path you go down. And what you say when you put something out into the world, you say, this is what I believe is a paradigm of entertainment. It's a good use of your time. And I singularly believe that because these are my tastes, right? Like, nobody's going to build something that's 100% data informed from day one. It's all going to have a lot of art, a lot of instinct, a lot of things. And what you're saying to the world is, I actually think this is entertainment. I think this is a good use of your time. I think you're going to love this. And sometimes in the game design world, when you see your retention is 10% and your monetization is 0, and everybody gives you a low Metacritic score, you're like, oh wow, like my taste, like they hate, right? And I think that's happened to anybody who's been in any kind of creative endeavor. You put something out and it doesn't land. It happens. Like, if you're in this business long enough, whether it's making a movie, writing a book, singing a song, making a game, like, not everything works all the time. And so about the community, like, we built things that we thought were really super compelling. And by the way, full credit to Lee. This whole thing was Lee's idea. Like, building blockchain brawlers was always Lee's baby. I've kind of come in and kind of taken the reins, but I'm trading on the things that he's the genesis of this whole thing. So I get a lot of credit where actually the credit should go to Lee. And I joke with him a lot, but he's brilliant. But the point is, the community has said to us, we also love what you've done, and we'd like more of it, and we'd like it this way. And they take it and they run with it, right? So there's a lot of crowdsourcing of ideas and upgrades. In fact, this whole Brawlers came from a poster one day who said, if I could just craft finishing moves all day long, that's all I would do. And I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. And I can take that and I can multiply it times 10,000. But the notion of crafting to a random outcome tied to because we were already going to build the PvP game. Like, that was already done. Like, we knew this needed to be that. We knew what it wanted to be. We knew who was going to do it. But then we took this one germ of an idea that came from the community, said, I love this game and I would love it even more if I could do X. And we said, that's great. Let me take that and run with it. Not to say that they designed it. This whole notion of, I'd love to do this as well. Like, when you have alignment around things that, again, like you love it, they also love it. Like, that's one of my favorite. And by the way, they love it so much they're creating fan sites. They're creating memes. They're creating all these funny videos. They all the Twitter accounts for Scotty Wide-Eye and Johnny Butterfinger and all these brawlers are all run by community members. They're not run by anybody at Wax. They said, I identify with Scotty Wide-Eye so much, I'm going to be Scotty on Twitter. Like, wow, I didn't even ask, right? You don't have to. I love it. Like, when you see those kind of things that are very organic, they're going to take initiative. Like, as a creator, like that's so intoxicating to me. So that's what I love about it, really.
Thank you very much. You were just mentioning about the Brawlers, and we're getting ready for something a little bit later today. Do you want to go into a little bit more about the pack crafting game?
It's super. Of course I do. Right? I mean, anytime I get a chance to talk about a feature, I would love to talk about it. So first of all, like I said, the Brawlers is the most powerful, most compelling asset I think that we've ever built, because only a few people hold it, but many, 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 many people need what it's going to put out. And we've got all these great kind of post PvP launch kind of user acquisition plans that we're gonna fly over the kind of next 90 to 180 days, and we're gonna get in people from all kinds of buckets and all that fun stuff. The Brawlers itself, though, is a really, really interesting game. Unlike past games, it's like, oh, I click and I mine a currency and I win. The crafting actions on the Brawlers are tied to risk profiles, low, medium, and high. And then what you craft, so there's a chance that you may not craft something. There's a chance you may craft something unbelievably rare, like legendary level rare. There's a high degree of failing on those things that have a high degree of reward. But then you can, put your finger on the scale by taking currencies that you already possess and influencing outcomes. But which outcomes are you influencing, and what are you doing, and how do you do it relative to everybody else? Like, there was this real intentional approach to design. And the Brawlers, by the way, has 1,000 different levels designed, handcrafted, by the previous Wax team, the current Toronto team. each level of the Brawl Seam, and there's 1,000, was handcrafted in terms of design, growth curve, difficulty, friction. All these things were all built in by hand. It wasn't just like, oh, let's just do this straight line appreciation. It's this very kind of monotonical kind of growth curve. So it was. But here's the thing that's really, really interesting. With this level design that we did, and again, there's the low risk, medium risk, and high risk path. And when you craft a pack, those packs fall into 4 categories. There's a finishing move pack, which are really, really cool. So think an analog to, we call it like the ice cold stunner as an example. And that's obviously influenced by, like all the finishing moves are influenced by people that we grew up loving, right? And we've put our own spin on it, and we very much have done it with a lot of love, but with a little wink and a nod to nostalgia. But like, you want to get a finishing move, great. Well, a finishing move pack is going to drop 7% of the time. 7% of the time doesn't seem very much, right? It's not. Well, then how do I get the legendary version of that? Well, you accumulate a lot of the lower level versions of it. Like, oh, so it's just 1-to-1? No, it's not just 1-to-1. You buy the common, you get a random uncommon if you upgrade. Then you have to blend a lot of the exact same common card to get a random rare card, and up it goes. So there's this real gamification, but the key to all of this is that there's this real intentionally kind of confusing way to progress. Because the one thing that I know about my community is they hate it when the answers to the test are really obvious. It's like, oh, you just do this times 10 every single day forever, and I'm bored within 72 hours. Like, we made this hard and confusing and complicated, and the meta is constantly shifting. And oh, by the way, the value of the assets, which is really going to drive a lot of behavior, right? This is the real wild card. The best path forward for every single player is going to be different per player, but a lot of it's going to be driven on what are the market prices. Like, what is the value of this asset? People like, oh, what should this card sell for? Like, I don't know, because I don't set the price, because I don't own it. You do. It's like, well, you should tell us what you. No, I shouldn't. Like, I don't. You understand? I don't own this. You do. You're not selling it to me. You're selling it to everybody. Well, what would everybody pay? Well, I don't know. That's what you have to figure out. So they love it when things are hard and challenging. And what ends up happening, Tommy, is the real byproduct of all this kind of confusion or lack of obvious path forward is you create this really compelling, interesting narrative in the community about all these different approaches get debated and get talked about. And that in and of itself becomes user-generated content within the channel. So people say, oh, I'm going to go the most aggressive path. I'm going to spend as fast as I can because I want to get to level 1,000 first. Good luck. That'll take you about 500 days. Well, it'll take you 300 days. It'll only take me 287 days by my math if I do this right. Okay, you're right. Like, again, setting up debates, setting up consternation, setting up conflict, setting up, different narratives and different things that people will bandy back and forth. Like, that's very intentional, because we know that kind of no obvious path forward is really, really good for everybody. It's a very healthy thing, that level of discourse. So we lean into that in a big, big way. And that's what the Brawlers affords you to be a part of and say, yeah, I've got a front row seat because I own one of these things, and your approach is very different than mine, but let's talk about it, and let's talk about it in the community, and let's talk about how we can help each other learn, and what do we know and what do we understand.
That's really enlightening, and I love how, like, I'm not sure if you mentioned it here, but like the idea popped in my head that there could be like a shifting meta depending on like how people decide to, like, what they decide to craft, who decides to get what. If someone's trying to stockpile, there's a lot of stuff that could happen here, and it's really exciting to see how it's going to unfold.
Yeah, Tommy, the thing that's really funny is that we had an issue with Scotty Wide-Eye when he first came out. He was, we had this great idea of the high-end market, the legendary owner is going to create so much Brawl, and Brawl's going to have a ton of value, and Brawl's going to have a ton of utility, but they can't progress very far because they're going to need gold. And the low end of the market, the Scotty Wide-Eye, the common NFT asset owner, will produce all the gold. And so they need each other, which is this great, healthy, like the top end of the market needs the bottom of the market, and neither one can progress without the other. And we thought, so these players will craft Scotties, they'll sell them to other players, that'll be the entry point. Like, the whole way we modeled this. And we said, well, these things are going to be worth a certain amount of money. Not a ton, but a certain amount. Well, when they came out, like, the gold that was dropped by Scotty was like, 10 to 15x what we ever modeled. And people said, you should have accounted for that. You should have anticipated that. I'm like, well, you can do kind of pessimistic, expected, optimistic modeling, but you can't do wildly beyond beyond what you can fathom model. Right. And even sometimes those models aren't accurate because it sometimes can be very, very hard to predict human behavior. And so we don't know how these cards are going to sell. We know that they're gorgeous. We know they have value. We know they're unbelievably cool to use in the game. And we know they're really, really well designed. There's a ton of utility. There's a ton of gamification to them. So we know the asset's amazing. What value people put on it, we don't know. Again, we've run several different models internally, but until it comes out and performs and then settles into kind of what the expectation is. We're just as interested as everybody else is.
Very cool. Jimmy came back down to the ring. Jimmy, floor is yours.
Is he holding a steel chair?
No, I just think that when people really realize when you say the most powerful asset with the Brawlers, I don't think people truly have realized, maybe outside of our Discord community, how powerful they really are and what you guys have actually created with allowing the players that own them to craft and sell all the items that'll be needed in the game. And I think as more people understand that, those remaining platinum land plots are going to start flying, because it truly is unique. And it's just, I think, something that it's kind of, you're creating the model for how games may be built going forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Jimmy. And, and it's really funny. Like, we tell this story all the time, but sometimes you just have to see it, right? Sometimes it doesn't really matter somebody can tell you it's the best thing in the world, and until you actually go and experience it, you don't really know. But the thing about the Brawlers too is that, like, this is like, I think 12 brand new unique screens. It is something like 28 different buttons and dials. They all have dynamic sound effects. So there's so much that have gone in just to the experience, just to use it. Like, forget the power that it represents, forget the scarcity. Feel like just the user experience of it is so well appointed. And the UI design that our internal team did, and Ref Jeff heads up the creative efforts. So if you see Ref Jeff online and you like using the Brawlers, give a little tip of the cap to Ref Jeff. But like, the usability of this is just off the charts, and it reflects our. There's this really funny story I tell sometimes. I'm going to use a little bit of a colorful language, but Frontierville came out, and there's this old thing in the social games where dubers would drop when you click buildings, and in Frontierville, it was the first time that you could take your mouse and sweep over them, and it sounded like a slot machine was just winning in the background. It was like such a great user experience. And a programmer came up to me, he showed it to me. He said, "Do you see their Duber collection?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You see the way they sweep back and forth, like with your mouse wildly, and it's just everything kind of, animates and just massive moments of joy and dopamine hits left and right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's incredible." He said, "Do you know why it's in there like that?" I said, "No, why?" He said, "Because somebody gave a shit." In other words, there was this thing that was very much like, you clicked it, great, but somebody cared enough to go that extra distance. When you look at the Brawlers and everything we've done to this point, but really, really the Brawlers, when you look at the Brawlers just in terms of using it, we care enough about what that user experience is. It's like, it would have been good enough to say, you know what? You hit a button and you get a pack. Okay. But this, you're actually hitting 17 different buttons to get 18 different packs at a variety of randomness and rarity. And like, there's all these things that went in because we cared enough about what that experience wanted to be. Not what the net outcome was, but the journey, right? It's about the journey, not the destination. So I think, Jimmy, when you utilize your Brawlers and others utilize it, like, wow, just using this is a joy. And I wish I could, because we also set up to use, like, every single day, you can do a bulk craft and you can be done in like 12 seconds. So like, wow, I wish I could literally do this all day, but you can't, because there's limits to it, right? We want there to be a real kind of joy in using it, not an overuse where you get bored with it.
Well, you just touched on something else too. That's, all the effort and energy that went into making how we're going to craft these items more than just click a button and it's done. And really, at the end of the day, you're talking about a small amount of folks that you did this for, because you're really talking about 1,000, 1,100 folks that are going to have access to do this. Yet, I mean, that just makes you realize, or should make folks realize, all the thought and everything that's going into the rest of the game that's being built for the mass players that we're hoping to bring in. So it speaks volumes. You spent that much time really for 1,100 folks when you're trying to get several 100,000 into the actual game that we're creating the items for. So it's pretty exciting. So
it's actually even fewer folks than that, because a lot of people bought more than one.
That's a great point. And I'm in that group. So
so is your friend FS35Y.
Yeah, good point. All right, guys. Well, appreciate it. I got to run some errands, but great job. Love jumping in here and hearing you guys. And Mike, by the way, that interview you did with the blockchain game guy, I mean, that was great. I mean, I'll tell you what, Like I said in the message, your enthusiasm and passion for this game and just gaming in general, I mean, you can't hide it, and it comes across every time you do a video or an interview. So Wax or Tyranny is lucky to have you on the show. So.
Thanks, Jimmy. Jimmy, checks in the mail. My best to Mary. I hope you guys are well. If I make it down to Art Basel, we'll have to grab a drink.
Sounds like a game plan. All right, buddy.
All right.
Thank you, Jimmy. And we are just about at time. I want to ask one more question of you, Mike.
Ask a question to Lee. I've answered too many questions.
Oh, well, okay. All right, Lee.
It doesn't matter if Lee doesn't know the answer. Let's let him maybe squirm a
This
little bit.
this will be a good question. This will be a good one. We'll test him real good with this one. All right, Lee. What is your prepared strategy for the Blockchain Brawlers beta?
I can't wait.
My strategy is to support Mike in anything he needs for executing on his strategy for the Blockchain Brawlers beta.
Oh my god!
No, I tried to give you a layup. You could have just been like, when I play, you better be ready for the storm. It's coming. I call you back earlier.
Yeah, well, the storm is coming.
Oh my god!
All right. Well, instead, I'm gonna get my raincoat, so I'm ready for the storm.
You're gonna need
All right. You guys, it's always a pleasure to have you guys on the call. The dynamic, it's enjoying. It's refreshing to listen to. The passion is relieving from some other place in the space. Sometimes it's like you might not have passion, or people are just trying to grab stuff. It's always like, I always want to echo kind of what Jimmy was saying, is like, it's really, really great to have so many people come, or have you guys come up and just waffle on a bit. It's really great. I love listening to you guys chat.
100%.
Thank you for having us. We always enjoy doing this. We really,
All right.
really do. It's a labor of love. It doesn't feel like work at all.
Yeah, these spaces especially are a lot of fun.
Yes.
It is our time. I will wrap it up now. I want to thank everyone below for joining us today and taking the time for each one to come up and ask questions of Mike and Lee. I especially want to extend a thank you to Mike and Lee for taking the time to join us today and share insight for Blockchain Brawlers, the Toronto switch, and everything else that's been going on with Toronto Studios, the rebrand. I want to thank Larcy for helping me co-host today. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. And I hope everyone has a fantastic Wax Wednesday and a great weekend. I'll see you all in the ring. So let's freaking brawl.
Let's freaking brawl. Thanks.
Next time, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Happy Wax Wednesday.